Okay. I'm getting calls. I'm trying to get calls.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Me too. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:03 p.m. I'm going to call the City Council meeting to order for October 27th, 2025. Thanks for coming down and joining us this evening. Before we get started with the agenda, if folks will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and do a roll call for City Council members. Ms. Trimble?
Yes. Beginning roll call with Anderson. I know she might be showing up later. Becerra.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Carlino.
Present.
Farmer.
Present.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Melson.
Present.
I'm not sure if your microphone was on.
Present.
There we go.
Thank you. Nugent.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
And Vasika.
Present.
All right. And we do have a quorum this evening.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have minutes from October 6th, 2025. Do any council members have any questions or proposed changes for the minutes of record? Okay, not seeing any, then those minutes will remain as submitted. Next, we have agenda item number 3 is the upcoming committee agenda, and there is nothing on your committee schedule this week, but Ms. Trimble, would you like to add to that detail, please?
No, that's correct. We had an exceptionally light number of requests. We were able to move things around to give people the day off. And then just as a reminder, we will actually have the following week off as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Trimble. So we have no committee schedule for this coming Wednesday, October 29th, and we do not have a city council meeting on Monday, November 3rd, which means there's also no committee meeting that Wednesday, which is the 5th. Okay. All right. Next up, we have our special presentations and proclamations. We don't have any neighborhood council updates this evening, but we do have 3 proclamations. So I'll go ahead and start with the Children's Grief Awareness. And Ms. Trimble, if you'll share that on the screen, folks can follow along, and I'll go ahead and get started. Whereas 52,000 Montana youth will experience the death of a parent or sibling before their 25th birthday, and whereas many kids feel misunderstood in the wake of loss, thinking that their grief is invisible to those around them, and whereas all bereaved youth deserve advocates supporting them as they navigate a world without their person, and whereas effective grief support can help prevent possible negative outcomes by teaching positive coping mechanisms and resiliency, and whereas recognizing this month serves to build a foundation of support for grieving youth, shining a light on a national community of bereaved individuals, support service organizations, and community members, and whereas our community is committed to supporting one another, working to raise awareness of children's grief and ensure that no child grieves alone. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the month of November as Children's Grief Awareness Month. And we have Michaela Bilou here to speak to that this evening. Michaela, please come on up, please. And Michaela, All right. Please say your name correctly into the record, and I'll go ahead and turn the microphone on for you. Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Michaela Billiou, and I'm the Development Associate at Tamarack Grief Resource Center. I'd like to say thank you to the Missoula City Council and Mayor Davis for honoring the month of November as Children's Grief Awareness Month. Higher than the national average, 1 in every 10 kids in Montana will experience the death of a parent or sibling by the time they turn 18. Furthermore, 1 in 4 youth who die by suicide were bereaved, highlighting the importance of bringing awareness and dedicating resources to grieving children in Montana. Grief touches us all uniquely, and your proclamation here today shines a light on our community's commitment to raising awareness for children's grief in Montana. Tamarack Grief Resource Center is honored to walk with youth, families, and communities in Missoula on their journey with grief. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Michaela, and thank you for shining a light on this area of awareness, and thank you to Tamarack Grief Resource Center for the amazing service that you provide our greater community. Thank you. All right. Next, we'll read the following proclamation, and this is in regards to Epilepsy Awareness Month. Whereas Epilepsy Awareness Month is a nationwide effort to raise awareness about the epilepsies, seizures, and side effects, as well as improving the lives of people affected by epilepsy through education, advocacy, research, and connection. And whereas epilepsy is defined by a tendency to experience seizures, sudden abnormal bursts of electrical activity in the brain that can disrupt behavior, awareness, and bodily control. And whereas epilepsy can also lead to challenges such as fatigue, memory difficulties, mood changes, anxiety, and trouble concentrating, all of which can significantly impact daily life. And whereas epilepsy is the 4th most common neurological disorder, nearly 3.4 million people in the U.S., including nearly 11,000 people in Montana, live with active epilepsy. And whereas we must increase public knowledge about the epilepsies and seizure first aid to change the way people think about epilepsies and seizures, decrease stigma and improve outcomes, because 25% of the general public say they would be nervous around a person with epilepsy. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the month of November as Epilepsy Awareness Month. And we have Jessica Veach here to speak to this tonight. Jessica, come on up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Davis, and thank you to the City Council for proclaiming November Epilepsy Awareness Month. I am the Executive Director of the Montana chapter of the Epilepsy Foundation, and this is just really means a lot to us, as the stigma and the misunderstanding of epilepsy has been going on for thousands of years. And so 1 in 10 people will have a seizure in their lifetime. 1 in 26 people live with epilepsy, and nearly 11,000 Montanans. So the Epilepsy Foundation offers programs and supports for those people and their families. And I would also just ask any of you if you would want to hang this in your business window or anywhere near a coffee shop, just to get the word out that the Epilepsy Foundation is in Montana and that we are trying to spread much needed awareness to help reduce stigma. So thank you again.
Absolutely, Jessica. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your service to our community. If you wish to leave flyers on the front table, that would be great. And I have an officer up front. I'll make sure that we get one of those for City Hall. Absolutely. Thanks. Take care. All right. We now have our 3rd proclamation for the evening, and this is titled Fire Eater Day. You might wonder what that's about, so we'll go ahead and bring that on the screen now. Whereas the Museum of Mountain Flying was created to preserve and promote the history of mountain flying, and whereas the Museum of Mountain Flying is the home of the historic Miss Montana, the official plane of Montana, as proclaimed by Governor Greg Gianforte, and whereas the Museum of Mountain Flying has recently acquired the A-26 Invader wildfire fighting airplane featured in the Steven Spielberg film Always. And whereas the public is invited to visit the museum to view the A-26 invader known as the Fire Eater. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the 8th day of November 2025 as Fire Eater Day and encourage all Missoulians who love airplanes and the history of mountain flying to visit the Museum of Mountain Flying. And we have Jeff Badnock here to speak to this proclamation this evening. Come on up, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for this proclamation. I'm joined this evening by several of my friends and fellow volunteers at the Museum of Mountain Flying. We're absolutely thrilled to bring this airplane to Missoula. It's not every day that we bring a movie star back home. If you haven't seen this film, it features a story about wildfire fighting, aerial firefighting in Montana. And this is the actual plane that was featured in that movie. On November 8th, we're going to have an event, a ticketed event out at the museum to officially welcome the Fire Eater aircraft to our collection of airplanes. Anyone who's interested in joining us out there, tickets are available through the Miss Montana Facebook page. And we hope that all who want to come out and join us in this official welcome, that they'll do that. Otherwise, after the 8th, please come out and see the plane for yourselves. If you have kids who like airplanes, there's no better place than the Museum of Mountain Flying to bring them, to let them get up close to these magnificent machines. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here and all of you this evening. Thank you for your contribution to the historical culture of our community and also the future of mountain flying. So we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Hope folks take advantage of that exhibit and display. Thank you. All right. So that does wrap up our special presentations and proclamations this evening. And so we'll now move on to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. We have a different process. This is our first evening with that new process, so bear with us here. I'll go ahead and read a quick description here. The first period of public comment or general reports from the public on items not on the agenda is limited to 20 minutes in total, with up to 3 minutes allotted per speaker. Each person may speak once per meeting concerning items not on the agenda. In-person comments take precedence. Sign-up is required and follows a first-come, first-served basis. The second period of public comment on items not on the agenda will follow immediately after the conclusion of all regular business and continue until all comments have been taken. So Claire was helping folks out in the front to sign up for public comment for items not on the agenda, and I have 5 folks that have signed up, and we have 20 minutes total, so I am confident that we can get all 5 folks in this first 20 minutes. I'll go ahead and time you here. You have 3 minutes per person, and this handy dandy machine will help you track your time there. So I'll go ahead and call the first person up, which is Nicole Murray, please. Nicole, come on up.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I am Nicole Murray, and I'm a single mother of 3 children. I've lived in Montana for 43 years. I grew up in Missoula in the 1970s. I went down the long slide, and I went to Shakey's Pizza. I went to St. Anthony's School. I went to U of M. I earned a scholarship in track and field and cross country. I am here to ask if the city council, can look at removing the rainbow off the pride flag. The reason I'm asking is because I love rainbows and so do my young children. I am concerned about the safety of children and others who love rainbows. They could be harassed, heckled, and be a victim of violence. Rainbows are a symbol of hope and peace. I am respectfully asking the city council to inquire about removing the rainbows off the pride flag. Because I love Missoula. again, I just really love Missoula and I love rainbows. When I had younger children, before I associated rainbows with the pride flag, we would paint a rainbow on our window. And now I feel I would be heckled a little bit if I did that. So that is just my personal feelings. But again, I'm someone who grew up drawing rainbows, and I'm not that. I am a person who, married with children with my husband, ex-husband now. But so I just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down, Ms. Murray. Appreciate your comments. Okay, next public commenter is Bob Moore. Mr. Moore, come on up.
My name's Bob Moore. First thing I want to comment on is the MRA. Have you heard me say many times that should be abandoned? It's not correct giving $10 million to the owner of a shopping center. We shouldn't be giving $9.8 million to a development here in town. And to think it's just the big guys on Russell Street, a outfit wanted to replace its I think it was some sort of a dry cleaning or washing place. So he could put in guess what he could put in? Wanted to give up his washing place so he could put in a casino. And we definitely needed another one. Y'all will all agree that we definitely need to replace that washing place for guess what? So we could put in well, I bet you probably know what he put in. At that time, I don't recall any of these drug places. I heard one, I think it was a council person, state that we had about 51 drug places. And we definitely need 51 drug places. I asked one commissioner, and he said, well, I just can't say no. I don't have any reason not to approve number 51. Why do we have these things? Why do we have so many policemen giving people tickets? So I ask again to get rid of the MRA. Don't fire them. They're probably good employees. But we don't need them spending millions, tens of millions of dollars.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mr. Moore.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And the next up for public comment is Barbara Pulley.
My name is Barbara Pulley, and I live in the South Gate neighborhood. And after attending the October 22nd presentation of the Midtown Commons Plan Development, I believe we need more public information and input on the design and/or allocation of the multifamily housing, park, commercial tenants, and townhouses. For example, the commercial allocation, if any, should be near the existing business on Paxton Street, not on the south end near Dixon Avenue. Also, while the Montana legislature has stipulated no parking restrictions on future development, I'm curious what the developer plans for parking. Also, what is the dollar amount of commitment being planned by the MRA for infrastructure, streets, parks, and the roundabout on Harv Avenue from TIP funding? Will our taxes increase next year for the urban district 3 due to this development? Also, does the Parks and Recreation Department or the developer provide the funding for the park? Thank you.
Thank you for coming down with your comments this evening, Ms. Pulley. All right. Next up for public comment is James Crosby.
Thank you very much. Good evening, council people. Mayor Davis. I don't play tennis and I don't really care for volleyball, but I love Missoula. I want to come back to that, but in respect to Councilperson Vasika's comments last week, people can be so mean online, and I just wanted to come to say thank you. Thank you as council people for serving. I am so proud of Missoula. At a time when the national temperature is very hot, I think it's cool that we can have civilized conversation. So, like I said, I don't care for tennis and I don't play volleyball, but I love that we have a place in our city to do that. I recently attended the No Kings rally. I loved the turnout, but I loved that it was peaceful. I also was excited to see the first legally recognized Indigenous Peoples Day in Caras Park. That seemed very cool. And now, with this new early open public comment period, I think it's very exciting to see a trend of compromise here in our fair city. It's very exciting to see that we give these new things a shot. And I love that we can have these conversations. So even though we might not all agree, even though we might not like tennis or volleyball or, Republican or whatever, we might not agree, but we're still neighbors. And I love that we can be neighbors. And I wasn't born here. I came here recently, but I love to call Missoula my home. And I thank you all for representing it like you do. With that said, as the elections come up, I'm excited to see the way that the city's been represented so far, and just ask that everybody remembers that once you're elected, you represent all the people, not just the people who voted for you, not just the people who feel the same as you do. I don't have any doubts that that will happen. I just wanted to give that as a public comment to say, we live in a cool spot. And I wanted to make sure that that is represented just as much as the mean things that people might say online. So thank you for what you do. Good luck in your races. I hope everybody runs fast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crosby. All right, folks, we have one more public commenter, and that is Carrie Schreiber, please.
Hello, Carrie Schreiber from Southgate Triangle, the Midtown Commons project. Barbara and I are both on the leadership team for Southgate Triangle. A few thoughts from the workshop. It was pretty confusing seeing how things were laid out. I appreciate that Bob Campbell and Mayor Davis were both present for that. The commercial is right behind my house, and for all I know, I'm going to be the 52nd pot shop located where I am in my backyard gardening. That was kind of odd, and as Barbara was saying, the commercial could be by where the other commercial is. It just felt really choppy and confusing. I asked at the MRA board meeting the next morning if they had an idea of what type of commercial they were intending from that area. They had no idea. Asked at community forum that evening to Emily Glucken from the planning department. She was presenting about the new zoning codes, what type of commercial could go in there. And it sounds like it could just be absolutely anything. And as someone that's been paying $2,000 a year into this urban renewal fund, and I know all my neighbors have been too, to have this come together the way it has, to be raising the entire riparian area we're trying to protect, to put a commercial lot there. I mean, I was kind of prepared to lose that for more neighbors, but to put commercial in is really confusing, and not knowing if it would be, offices that have business hours or something that's going to be being a disruption to the whole neighborhood while they're trying to sleep. It's, I don't understand that. I was also concerned at community forum to hear the university representatives ask about why Bonner Park isn't listed as open space. And from what I'm understanding from the conversation with the land use planning person was that we're not really designating parks as open space unless they're in a floodplain. And I would love to hear more information on that. And I might have to stay till the end of the meeting or tune back in to hear the closing comments, maybe get a little bit more information. But it just feels pretty out of control with that. And MRA, I feel, used to fund a lot smaller local projects than what has been recent since MAP has become such a driving force behind them. So there's a lot of pieces to understand in all of this, but I just want us to be thoughtful, and after a year of our neighborhood advocating for good development, to see this plan was pretty confusing and disappointing.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for coming down with your comments this evening. That does wrap up our public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Thanks, folks, for signing up. And as a reminder, we did put information on the screen ahead of time, and we'll continue to articulate to the public ways in which you sign up in person, and if you can't make it in person, how you would do so online. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the remaining part of our agenda. This evening on tonight's council agenda, we do not have any public hearings, and we do have one item of new business. There's also one item of regular business when we get to that point in the agenda, but we'll go ahead and start with that new business item. This is agenda item number 7.1, which is the Wild Route Subdivision Park Development Agreement. And we have Tara Porcari here to provide the staff presentation, please.
Awesome. Hi there, Tara Porcari. I'm a planner with Development Services. I'm the reviewing project planner for the Wild Route, or formerly Hillview subdivision. And tonight we need to bring forward a Parks Development Agreement for the subdivision. Lucy Rumler with Parks will be presenting on the agreement, but just for some background, I wanted to acknowledge that completing this agreement is a condition of subdivision approval number 39 that council approved back at preliminary plat. That approval in September of 2024. The condition that we are meeting reads, the subdivider shall enter into a development agreement with Missoula Parks and Recreation to establish expectations and timing of city parkland improvements as included in the phasing plan prior to phase 1 final plat approval. And then additionally, condition number 40 also discusses the subdivider's responsibility for park improvements to all city parkland and common area used to meet our parkland dedication requirements. So at this time, the development team is starting to file for final plat. So this agreement needs to be approved by council and signed by all of the parties prior to that filing. That should pretty much be it for background, but just wanted to kind of acknowledge some of that. The agreement itself was included with the staff referral, and then Lucy is here to go into the details a little bit more. So I'll pass it to her.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, like Tara said, I'm Lucy Rumler. I'm a project manager with the Parks and Recreation. And I've been working with the Wild Route team to develop designs for the new park in this subdivision. So after I present some information on this park development agreement, I'll bring forward the motion. And am I able to share my screen without any permissions?
You should be able to, but if not, we'll go ahead and make that a possibility. Ms. Trimble, can you tell if Ms. Rumler can share her screen? There we go. There we go.
All right. Are you able to?
We can see that.
Are you able to? Okay, you can. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so, like Tara said, the preliminary plat approval of the subdivision, preliminary plat has already been approved. And that preliminary plat approval included, 7.8 acres for a new public park. And that park is going to be dedicated in two different pieces. And so just for clarity, I'm going to refer to them as Park 1 and Park 2. So these dashed lines are a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to flip back and forth a little bit to make them visible. But so Park 1 in this lighter green is about 4.8 acres, and it's located across the new section of Rimal Road from the multifamily that's in this subdivision. And it includes a part of Moose Can Gully that'll be protected. And then farther up the hill in this darker forest green, Park 2 continues along the property line and connects to the existing Rimal Road right of way up there. And then together, these two pieces allow for a trail connection that connects all the way from Hillview Road up to Rimal Road, help protect Moose Can Gully, and then fills in a gap of the 10-minute walk that is the goal for the Parks Department for public park access. So the developer and the city collaborated to develop the approved Park 1 plan, which includes plans and specifications for all of the components listed out in condition 40 of the subdivision approval. And the Park 1 plans are referenced in the development agreement and attached as an exhibit to the agreement. For Park 2, since that's a little bit later, required later in the subdivision, those plans haven't been fully designed yet, but the developer and the city will collaborate to develop those plans. So Park 1 and Park 2 improvements listed in condition 40 of the subdivision preliminary plat are the responsibility of the developer. In the future, the city may choose to invest in additional improvements that are beyond those listed in condition 40 in accordance with the pros plan and available budget. Ongoing park maintenance, once each of those parks has been completed, will be done by the city of Missoula. So the purpose of the park development agreement is to defer build out of Park 1 and 2. And this benefits both the city and the developer. The developer benefits by accruing necessary cash flow from home sales in the subdivision to build the parks and other infrastructure. And the city benefits by having additional residents living in the park service area and contributing to the park district, which is the funding mechanism for park maintenance. The development agreement links deferment timing to dwelling unit or the equivalent residential building permit. And so I kind of blew up this phasing table here to help illustrate this. So Park 1 would have been required as part of the phase 1 improvements of the subdivision according to the subdivision preliminary plat approval. And this park development agreement makes it so that in order for the developer to obtain the subdivision's 225th dwelling unit, which is equivalent to the 22nd residential building permit, because the multifamily was constructed as part of phase 1, but those aren't permitted with individual building permits. That's why those two numbers are different. In order for the developer to build that 225th dwelling unit and 22nd residential building permit, Park 1 must be completed and accepted by the city per the approved park plans attached to the development agreement. So this essentially sets it slightly later in the subdivision. And then similarly, Park 2 would have been required as part of the Phase 3 improvements, but is shifted slightly later in the planned subdivision. And these are linked to, or this park completion is linked to the 283rd dwelling unit, which is equivalent to the 80th residential building permit. And then one kind of final detail in the park development agreement is that it references financial security, and that's attached as an exhibit, and that basically provides backing in the case that the developer is not able to carry out park improvements. And the park development agreement also requires that once the subdivision gets to that point, a financial security is developed for Park 2. So circling back to the requested motion, that is that I move the City Council to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the park development agreement between the City of Missoula and Hillview Road LLC. And then the project engineer for Wild Root Subdivision, Zach Graham of Graham Engineering, is here to assist Tara and myself with any questions about park development agreement. So yeah, with that said, I'd like to turn this over for any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you, Tara. We'll turn this back to questions from council, and I see Councilor Nugent, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor. You kind of spoke to it, but I'd like you to expand on it a little bit. Park 1 is next to all of these apartments that were able to go in just by permits, so before the subdivision was approved. And I kind of assume that Park 1 is also serving as the activity space requirement for this for those apartments. I could be wrong on that. So could you explain a little bit more? Is this in the best interest of Missoula Parks to delay each of these parks by a phase, or what's the larger rationale?
Yeah, and that's an important detail. So that space is going to be developed as activity area first, in order to serve residents of the multifamily buildings, which you're right, came in permitted as multifamily ahead of the subdivision. And so there'll be kind of two phases where right now, actually, the trails are nearly finished, and that'll be open as activity area pretty shortly, but it has not yet been fully built to the park plans in with what's attached to the park development agreement. And so it's sort of a preliminary phase where it's serving as activity area, and then will, at a later point, they'll come in and add irrigation and plant trees and do other improvements that are beyond what's required as part of activity area, but satisfy the requirements to meet city park standards.
Quick
Does
follow-up.
that answer your question?
Well, I guess how does that benefit the city of Missoula?
The phased approach, itself doesn't, I guess, so the deferring it does help in terms of that allows the city of Missoula to take over maintenance of the park at a time when there's more residents living in the subdivision and contributing to Park District, which is the funding mechanism for maintenance of that park. And so the benefit to the city is basically having a better funded park district to pay for maintenance of that park.
So the city wants to wait until more of that neighborhood is funding it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I guess I just want a little more clarity as far as the security portion of this and their obligation as developers for this park. you may or may not be aware of a situation that's occurring in another part of my ward up kind of sort of in the Linda Vista area in the Invermere neighborhood with a park. It's a different animal in that it started out as a county park, then once it annexed, it became basically an HOA responsibility there. The homeowner's responsible for maintenance. But that said, the developer in that particular situation was supposed to make certain improvements, and the developer did not follow through on those improvements. And now we're struggling. And I believe, Madam Mayor, you know what I'm referring to there. But there's a struggle there, you know, to hold that developer accountable. And the residents that live up there were concerned that we didn't have the leverage necessary because we didn't have a sufficient security deposit demanded of the developer in there. I just wonder if you could clarify perhaps a little bit more, you know, that there's going to be sufficient, a sufficient security mechanism placed on the developer in this particular case to ensure that, you know, these improvements do in fact take place, and that we get to a point where then, you know, the homeowners of, you know, once you're talking about completion of phase 2 going on phase 3, there is sufficient revenue there for, you know, what would be, I guess, you know, ongoing maintenance of those facilities.
Thanks. Thank you for your question. Yeah, so we've learned a lot from the Invermere case and some other ones that we do need to create better assurances. And so this is actually one of the first parks that will have an improvements agreement backing it. That is its own entity. So we've the Public Works and Mobility Department, they use improvements agreements to back roads within subdivisions, other public infrastructure improvements. And so this is a tool that has been used for years and years and years. And so we are finally using that as a tool for parks to help ensure that we are getting the park that was initially agreed upon. And so how that works is for the park plans that were developed, opinion of probable cost was developed based on that, and then that amount is required to be backed by financial security, and so that all is referenced in the park development agreement as well. And I see Zach has had his hand up, and I don't know if Zach, if you're able to jump in, but maybe you can add to that.
And if so, Zach, please identify yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, y'all. Zach Graham, owner's representative, 4350 Ravalli Street, Suite B, Bozeman, Montana. And really available to answer any questions, but I think as Lucy stated, the owners secured the park, signed the development agreement and improvements agreement to secure. I think one other thing just to point out, just to emphasize the activity area, about 40% of the cost of the overall security, that work has been done this fall. So the mass grading of the park, placement of topsoil, the construction of the trails, and then they'll be seeding that. What hasn't been done yet is the sod for the sodded areas, the planting, and then as well the irrigation for the park, and that's what would be done at a later time. But really, then the goal is with the seeding and then the trails in place is that this is an area that will be available to be used, really right away. But then it'll be maintained by the developer until the completion of the work, at which point, similar to what Lucy's saying, in the future, once there's more lots and everything, and similarly, the developer has money coming in, they'll finish the park and then it'll be handed over to the city.
Okay. Counselor?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the information. I just, little gun shy after my experience with what's going on up in Vermeer, what continues to unfold up there, and just make sure we're going down a path that avoids those situations and kind of the lessons learned there. So yeah, I appreciate the detail on that answer. Thank you.
Indeed, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Graham, for joining us. It is good to learn from our past, so we, continually improve. Councillor Jones.
Thanks. That was the main issue I just wanted to have covered. And then just in terms of at some point in the future, when the developer has more money and there's more money paying into the Parks District, then it will be handed over. Is there some, if I read it, I didn't recall it from the documents. Is there some hard deadline, like by phase 4, this will be done? Or what does that mean exactly? Just to have clarity on what we're looking at, because yes, I've heard a lot of discussions about this other subdivision over the years.
What we've found is the best mechanism to kind of provide a time point on is to use residential building permits. And since that's a very discrete number, and obviously is kind of the goal here to create those housing units. And so we've done that in the past with, for example, West End Home subdivision. That park development agreement laid out certain park improvements and how they would need to be, I think that one lined it out. Construction would need to start by a certain residential building permit and then be complete by another one. And yeah, I think that is the best approach that we know of without kind of setting a date that then becomes something that has to change.
Follow up, please. And so just what are the parameters for how many building permits will be issued to trigger the completion of the park?
Sure, yeah, so let's see here. The development agreement makes it so that Park 1 must be complete and fully accepted by the city. And that itself, what accepted by the city means is laid out in the plans and specifications. So, certain coverage of vegetation, the irrigation system has been tested and works properly. The trees have been inspected, all kind of all that good stuff. At that acceptance point, that enables the developer to obtain their 225th dwelling unit, which, sorry, let me go here, which is the 22nd residential building permit. And then for Park 2, that is going to be required to be fully built out and accepted in order for the developer to obtain their 283rd dwelling unit, which is equivalent to the 80th residential building permit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right, great. Thank you for your questions, Council. I don't see any other hands raised, so I believe that wraps up the questions portion. We'll move to Councillor Nugent to hear the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move City Council approve and authorize the mayor to sign the park development agreement between the City of Missoula and the Hillview Road LLC.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So the motion's on the floor. This opens up the item for public comment. Public comment on this agenda item. Anybody wishing to make public comment on the Wild Root Subdivision Park Development Agreement is welcome to. And I'll go ahead and time you for your 3 minutes starting now.
BK Montana, Karl Spitzmacher, point maker in translation of German. My question is, where is the hard cash of employment coming into this metropolitan area to afford these houses, let alone the transition of people that might move up in that area for the people to afford the houses that may be vacated? I kind of question the cash flow of this project, of who's actually going to pay the interest rate on these mortgages if they're not going to be mortgaged.
Thank you, Mr. Spitzmacher. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Again, this agenda item is the Wild Root Subdivision Park Development Agreement, specific to the Park Development Agreement. Go right ahead, Mr. Moore.
Bob Moore. I just simply say we've spent too much money already on parks and trails. It just never stops. Just never stops. We spent too much already. I am totally 100% opposed to spending one more dime on a park or a trail.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Anybody else for public comment on this agenda item?
I don't know if this is specifically on the agenda item, but it looks like we have tremendous amount of traffic that is going through Hillview Way and connecting to 39th and Russell. And lo and behold, I wonder if they've thought through the erosion and everything that goes into that area. The original Linda Vista had a lot of sewage problems many, many years ago. And I'm just wondering how that is all being fully understood by all the governmental agencies that might be involved, whether it's the transportation, road department, or the sewage system. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Pulley. I'll remind the public that this subdivision has already been approved in September of 2024. So all of the conditions that have to be met in terms of subdivision regulations were addressed at that time. This is in particular in regards to the phasing of the park development plan and the development agreement. So those questions were indeed addressed in the subdivision development application and approved by council in September of 2024. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the audience. Anybody online? Okay, not seeing any online. That wraps up our public comment for this agenda item and brings it back to council for any additional questions or comments.
Thanks, Mayor. Just two quick comments for public comment, which I appreciate. First one, as you mentioned, the parks were a requirement of the subdivision to be paid for by the developer. So the installation of the parks is entirely being paid for by the developer. Once the park is developed, it becomes a city park, and the maintenance becomes part of that broader conversation, which is what they were getting at with the waiting for the neighborhood to grow a little bit more. But I appreciate your comment, Mr. Moore. And road and traffic, as well as sewer, were debated quite a bit when we talked about this, especially road and traffic. There are other connections to that. And I believe, as I recall, there's more to come on kind of where it connects to Hillview. But we were told that when they redid Hillview, they redid it anticipating growth in some of these areas. But sewer is also something that is reviewed at every subdivision, and if it's deemed to not be appropriate, actions would have to be taken. Similar to water, where we just had the subdivision out in Lower Miller Creek have to acquire water rights to give to the city to account for the water impact. So they did review it, but I appreciate that comment. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Any other comments by council? All right, not seeing any then, I believe we can go ahead and take a roll call vote, please.
All right. Ready for roll call?
We're ready.
Thank you. Beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Carlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Vasika.
Yes.
And that's unanimous.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I appreciate the staff and the project representative participating this evening, being available for questions. Thank you very much. That does wrap up that item. So we conclude item 7.1. We'll next move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in city council committees to be placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings by voting on them as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud so citizens watching on MCAT will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote.
All right. On this evening's consent agenda, first up, we have a motion to approve accounts payable for claims or checks dated October 28th, 2025 in the amount of $3,187,298.06. Our second item is the motion to set a public hearing for November 17th, 2025, and preliminarily adopt an ordinance to rezone the subject properties located at 1010, 1020, and 1030 Reserve Street, and legally described as Lot 6 and 7 of Geezy Addition and Lot 1 of Davis Addition, located in Section 29, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, PMM, from B3-2 Business Mixed Use /DE-C Design Excellence Overlay Corridor Typology 4 to C2-1 Community Commercial /DE-C Design Excellence Overlay Corridor Typology 4, and refer this item to the Land Use and Planning Committee for presentation and discussion on November 12th. Our next motion is one to adopt the 2025 Stormwater Quality Plan by formal resolution. We have another motion to approve the purchase of repairs by Hotchkiss Heating and Air in the amount of $65,330 and the subcontractor electric controls in the amount of $22,000, both of Missoula, Montana, for the repairs needed to Missoula Fire Department Station 1 HVAC system. And the last item on this evening's consent agenda is a motion to approve a resolution establishing the Clark Fork Market, the Missoula Clark Fork Market, as an authorized farmers market and allowing it to operate between November 1st and April 30th each year.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Ms. Trimble. And so do we have any public comment on items that are on the consent agenda? Any of those items that were just listed on the consent agenda? Any public comment on those? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the audience. I'll check online here to see if there's anybody online that wishes to speak to the consent agenda. Okay. Not seeing any public comment. Do we have any council members that wish to separate a question or have an announcement for intent to abstain? Okay, and I'm not seeing any then. We can proceed with the full consent agenda and a voice vote. Ms. Trimble, thank you.
All right, voting on this evening's consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That also passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That wraps up our consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 10, which is regular business. We have one item under regular business this evening, and that is item 10.1 DB, Poverello Center Operations and Outreach Contract, fiscal year 26. We'll go ahead and the staff does not have any new information to present here. I do believe this was placed on regular business because this was not voted on unanimously. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to our committee chair Jones to make the motion and start the conversation.
Thanks. So the recommended motion is authorizing the mayor to sign and execute a contract with the Poverello Center for the provision of services and programs specific to people without a house in Missoula and providing comprehensive outreach services to that same population funded by the city of Missoula. And basically it's the homeless outreach team. So I do know that Ms. Bonnie, the Executive Director of the Poverello Center, is here tonight to answer some questions. We're not able to have staff here last Wednesday, but Ms. Bonnie is here to, I have a few questions queued up that I can ask her, but I'll defer to you on sequencing, so let me know when I can do that.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. I think you should go ahead and take it away. Please ask those questions.
Great, okay. Ms. Bonnie, if you want to come on up, thank you for being here Monday night. I appreciate it. And I think I just wanted to get some more information about the homeless outreach team on the floor would be really helpful. And so first, if you could just talk a little bit about what, we always call it the HOT team, but it's a homeless outreach team, what HOT does, and in general, the value.
I would be happy to. Jill Bonney, Executive Director of the Poverello Center. Again, apologies for not being here on Wednesday. I was gone on a trip that was planned long before this was scheduled. So happy to be here tonight. Yeah, the homeless outreach team, you know, we don't want to call it the HO team, so we call it the HOT team. Does a lot in the community. I would say, you know, the basics are things like working with people that are unsheltered and getting them their basic needs, gear and supplies in the winter, relationship building with people that are living unsheltered, really so that when the time comes and they're ready to move on to either shelter or housing, that they have some trust built and a relationship built. They also work with businesses in the community and do what they call in-services. And so conversations and maybe a little bit of training on what struggles and challenges people who are living unsheltered have, and maybe some suggestions or tips on how to have a conversation with someone if they're outside their business. And they have the homeless outreach team hotline, and so people can call that if they are concerned about someone, or if it's someone who's living unsheltered and they need some assistance. So in addition to that, and I'm probably going to forget a lot of things they do, and so but I wanted to really talk about some of the things especially they've been focusing on over the last couple of years. And they really help people obtain identification and prepare for housing applications. A lot of times people don't have, you know, a driver's license or birth certificate, and they need to be able to get that identification to be able to fill out a housing application. They also help transport clients to housing intakes and apartment viewings and appointments that are required for housing eligibility. So those are just, it's a very small section of what they do. They work with a lot of people in the community. I do want to say that the people HOT serves are among Missoula's most chronically homeless and hardest to reach. And HOT is the only outreach team in the community that specifically is dedicated to supporting this population. I do also, because I was around when this funding first started, and it was during the pandemic, there was a lot of money that was available for helping with houseless services. And so we were able to expand what was a 2-person team. Actually, I think it was 1.5 individuals to be 5, because there were a lot of people outside. We had to limit our space indoors, and a lot of people were staying outside. So we expanded our team, and when that funding was gone and the pandemic was nearing the end, that's when the conversation came up of how can we keep this team expanded at 5 people, because we see the value as a community for the work that they're doing. So I know it came up on Wednesday, you know, what would the consequences be of not having this funding? And we would still have the homeless outreach team. It would just be significantly smaller. And so the work that they would be able to do and the meetings they would be able to show up in and the people that they would be able to work with would be much smaller. But happy to answer more questions.
Ms. Jones?
Yeah. Thanks. You actually answered my third question in terms of if this funding isn't there, what's the impact? So thanks for covering all of that. I guess the other kind of main thing I wanted to talk about is always discussion about metrics and data and reporting, and, programs need to earn their keep by showing the value through metrics and data. But I think this is pretty people focused, frankly, and data and metrics are all great. But if you could speak to what the HOT team does in terms of reporting, but also the reality of how that job works, and that reporting is maybe secondary to handling the situations in front of them sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes that's just the way it works, even when we try to do our best, but to gather data and make sure we're recording that. So this is the 5th year that there's been funding for the homeless outreach team. And over that time, we have had outcomes that we need to meet with those contracts. But over the last couple of years, it has changed from being qualitative to more quantitative. And so we've met more numbers-based metrics than just the HOT team will have these conversations and then responding in narrative form. And so that's taken a little bit of adjustment for the team. I think they are very, out and on the ground and with people, and it's not their natural instinct to have be the part of their job to come back and log everything that they did on a computer, but they're doing a good job and they're improving. And so I think, as our metrics go up, I think Serena spoke to it a little bit last Wednesday, that, some of the outcomes are the same, but our number of what we need to complete has risen. And so honestly, I think they are having way more conversations than what is logged in the data, and a lot more outcomes. They just need to continue to improve on coming back in and getting that logged, if that makes sense.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
So that basically covers what I wanted to just have out on the floor. So thank you, Jill. Appreciate that. And I do want to speak to this motion, but I assume there might be other questions. And
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you. And we do have the motion. Thank you, Ms. Bonnie. Really appreciate you being here. And I know you'll make yourself available if you need to. Again, really appreciate that. Thank you. The main motion has been made. So really we're in the parliamentary debate section. This means that we can hear more questions from council. We can also hear any comments from council. We haven't had a chance, however, for any public comment on this agenda item yet. So if it's okay with council members, I'll go ahead and take that public comment now, and then we can come back again to any additional questions or any comments that council members have. And I see that we have a couple of council members that have raised their hand, but assuming we can go to public comment first, if that's all right, I'll go ahead and I'll start actually online. I see that Katie Leahy, you've had your hand raised, and why don't you go ahead and get us started, and then I'll come back we'll start with folks online, and then I'll come back to folks in the room. And go ahead and unmute yourself. When you get a chance to do that, I'll go ahead and start the 3-minute timer on this side. Give you a second to unmute there.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Leahy. I am the HOT team lead. I just wanted to make a couple comments to back up Paparello and what Jill was talking about earlier. Data is a real big beast, and data changes. And we have different, maybe not huge contractual changes, but huge language changes on how to track that data. I've been on the team for about 4 years now. I come from a data background, and we're definitely doing so much better in data. And as the city, as the homeless outreach and homeless providers are doing, I just want to say, we've always had those housing problem solving conversations. This is what we've done pretty much since the inception of HOT. these have always been going on. It's just like, how do you want this data? How does this data look? How do you enter the data? And so in the last year and a half or so, that's been a real concentration. And I think we're definitely dialing it in, working with the city, working with the providers. I just wanted to make that point that it's a very big beast. And even though the hot team cannot tell you we housed 6 people in the last 3 months, I can tell you that every touch point that we have with folks makes a difference. Whether that is just like getting them into the system or them having the choice to be in the system, that can take anywhere from a day to, in my experience, 3 years. And we touch point a lot of people with sack lunches. And while we're doing those sack lunches, we do the housing conversations. They're just not easy to portray to you all. I just want you to know that we're doing it, and and our ways of doing it with your help are showing up in our data. And I would really, really encourage folks that want to know more about what we do is to come out with us, because it's really hard to put in words and data what we do. And so I just encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leahy. Appreciate you sharing your perspective this evening. Kyla Tripp online. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and share your public comment as you can unmute there.
Not able. Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I just heard a couple of things in that the last individual's comment. Data's a beast and data changes, and we helped 6 people in the last 3 months, and that's fantastic. But in the company I work at, I would be fired if I presented that information. It's absolutely kind of useless to not have any metrics on how much it costs. How much did it cost to house those 6 people in the 3 months? What is your metric for success? What's the long-term success? Those people have been housed. How long are they housed for? And the other thing I want to bring up in general is, what community programs do we have for young families? And I'm specifically talking about this for the Johnson Street shelter that has, beds with separated by curtains. How are we allowing families with young children to feel safe and have places for them to go to? Because in my mind, that is where I value, and I want to get these people back up and running. Everyone falls on hard times, and these are the people I want to help, and I don't see a lot of resources for that. So I'm not sure if that's something that can be addressed, but I would really reiterate that stats suck. I hate spreadsheets. I have about 50 open on my computer right now. I have to find ways, unique ways. I have to work, sometimes I'm working up until 2 o'clock in the morning, but I gotta do it because I need to show what I'm worth. And we can't just accept that you're at your word, that you're doing what you're doing. And I do appreciate that you are, but we have no proof. That's where we're at.
Ms. Tripp, thank you for your comment. I'm looking online to see if there's any additional public comment for this agenda item, and then I'll come back to folks in the room for their public comment. So I'm not seeing any additional public comment online. So I'll come back to the room. If there's any public comment on this agenda item, please come on up now.
That's a simple question. Is there a maximum budget for this contract? Is it open-ended? And what is the time period for this service? That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Pulley. Any other members of the public wanting to make comment on this agenda item? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Mary Giuliani, and I just really want to thank the members of the Poverello Center. I want to thank the HOT team. I grew up in Missoula. We grew up volunteering at the Poverello Center when it was downtown. The issue of unhoused people is, as you all know, multifaceted, very complex. Councilmember Campbell, I appreciate your concern for safety in Missoula and your advocacy for that. It seems like, you know, in looking at the budget, we might have other places where we could cut rather than taking away assistance to some of the most vulnerable people in our community, which I know that the HOT team works tirelessly to connect with and serve. And so I just wanted to, again, express my gratitude for you all.
Thank you, Ms. Giuliani. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment this evening? Again, comments on this agenda item. Public comments on Poverello Center Operations and Outreach Contract Fiscal Year 26.
K. Montana, Carl Spitzmacher. I'm very familiar with the HOT team, but I'm not quite realizing the outreach of the issues that concern the general public, how they document the fact of the matter that ends up at public safety, which costs a whole lot more money. I do advocate that the HOT team is the equivalent of the homeless parent transit system, where they do work with specific individuals that actually, I suspect, reach out to the HOT team equitably. There are individuals that are questionable, that create problems that should be documented appropriately. And I said to the individual that finances the issue, which would be the city council, if not the mayor. I understand Katie, what's her name that just spoke here, answers to you. And I brought up specific issues that should be brought to your attention in regards to who's actually funding this, which is the taxpayer. I'm an advocate of the HOT team, but it needs to come under more guideline directive of the issues that are created that is more costly to the taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Spitzmacher. All right, any other members of the public that wishes to come up and make comment?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Maddie. Ward 3, I work with the homeless outreach team. I have my dream job. I will require some patience this evening as I wasn't able to prepare much. I want to express what we encounter in a day. Okay, so today it was a magical occurrence. There's an individual who was displaced after the Johnson Street shelter closure. This individual became unhoused, and he gave me permission to share his story, and he was so gracious. He became unhoused due to a bicycle accident. He was hit by a vehicle and had brain surgery, suffered traumatic brain injury, and he suffers from paranoia from houselessness and this injury that he could not return to shelter until we encountered him today on the sidewalk at Tremper's, and he was just like, I'm so lost, I'm so lost, I'm so lost. I'm doing things that I would never do because of my circumstances. And he's been sleeping in the cold since Johnson Street closure, since the Johnson Street closure, or shelter closure, excuse me. And we were able to reunite him with shelter today. And that was into the welcoming arms of not only staff, but people who recognized him. And that was a reuniting with safety and family, because otherwise he wouldn't have anywhere else to go. Our community partnerships are actually remarkable. We bring medications to the Poverello and other unsheltered individuals. And, you know, it's like I walk into Partnership Health Center and people beam to see us because they know the folks that we're serving and the easy access of this medication because of the HOT team. I also go to the DMV where I'm very popular because I get to get people there identifying documentation, but really the core of our work is love. And that I have been told countless times just in like it's message from the divine that the hot team was essential for these people's survival, that we are literally the food, their source of food, their source of warmth. I'm not just talking about material goods, because we deeply care for the folks that we serve. Rest in peace, Deborah Cheatham, who existed all last winter, elderly woman, 79, who experienced frostbite, and we took her to her daily infusions every day for 6 weeks, until she was housed, and then eventually passed away. Thank you.
Maddie, thank you for coming down and sharing your comments and your perspective this evening. We appreciate it. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak to this agenda item this evening?
My name's Karen Giuliani. I just was wondering, a lady asked about the money aspect of this. I again want to commend the Poverello Center. I think they do a fantastic job, and I wish we could give them lots more money because they have a huge job. Now that the shelter's gone, I'm assuming that this agreement here is the only thing that we have right now that are helping the homeless. I mean, I know there's other organizations that are out there and help too, but as far as the city's involved, and you're going to authorize a signing and execute a contract, but maybe I missed something. I don't keep up with everything, but I don't see the amount of money here. What is the contract? What does it say? I mean, is it open-ended like she asked? What are we signing? What are you signing here as far as money goes? And so I would like it if you could answer that. Thanks.
Thank you for your questions and comment, Ms. Giuliani. Any other members of the public this evening? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Allie Harrison, Ward 3. I first of all just want to thank you all for what you do. I just want you to know I really do appreciate the sacrifice that you make all the time. As I consider the conversation surrounding whether to continue to fund the contract with the Poverello Center, what comes to my mind is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. In the last year, we've seen the closure of a shelter, even as the snow's about to fly. We've also seen at the same time many people being connected to resources that they hadn't been before through the rigorous housing sprint, which is a huge victory. We've made progress in some ways and seeming setbacks in other ways. And now the question presented is whether or not to continue funding the only outreach team to our unhoused population. I venture to say if any one of us were in the shoes of folks who find themselves unhoused, we would want someone in our corner. We would not want to feel alone. We would want to know that there is some tether to our community as we've known it all our lives. We would want a hand up so that we could continue to pursue our goals and achieve greater stability. I believe as we treat the least of these among us, we treat everyone. The heart of Missoula is the people who live here, many of whom now have fallen into homelessness because of the unaffordability of living here. That is not their fault. This is a reality. It's a temporary circumstance and not a reflection of anyone's core identity. To treat a sickness, you do not hate the person who is sick. You provide treatment and a cure for what ails them. To treat poverty, we don't wish it away or demonize the folks who find themselves there. We do something to help. And I hope that this is a call to action. I hope you hear and receive a clarion call to action tonight that if we choose to disallow people in poverty to live among us, then may it be because we were so over-the-top generous that poverty could not stand in our midst. Not because we are driving people out, but because we are doing everything in our power to help our neighbors out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Really appreciate your comments this evening. Other members of the public that wish to provide comment on this agenda item?
My name's Chris Kennedy, Kennedy, and I live in Ward 3. On my way here, I got to try out the new light on Wyoming and Orange. I got to see the vast spaces with no cars as I waited at the light. I didn't particularly like it. But I suppose some people really appreciate that new light and find it useful in their lives. I may tend to see things a little too black and white, but I think there are certain issues that the vast majority of Missoulians believe as I do. One being that public comment should be valued and be placed at a convenient time for the people. I'm glad to be here for the first day where that was enacted and that was put in place. Another is, I think that the city overwhelmingly supports the efforts of the HOT team and the really graceful and beautiful work that the people on that team do. I happen to be a clinician myself, and let me tell you that the difference between a person who has come from homelessness and has had the services of the HOT team and someone who has not is night and day. Some people form such bonds with the people on the HOT team that they use their phone numbers. They give them their phone numbers and they use them as their collateral information so I can call and discuss them. I get a release form, etc. I promise. Anyway, I do hope that the maximum amount of money that is available will be applied to this really beautiful resource that we have in this town, and that you will support its continued existence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. All right. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment on this agenda item this evening? I'm not seeing any here in the audience. So then we'll go ahead and bring it back to council comments. Thanks, everybody, for your comments this evening. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks everybody that showed up tonight to speak, reference this agenda item. As you may recall, last Wednesday when this was brought before committee, I had concerns with this contract, concerns that still remain with me. And these are concerns have preceded the conversation about this contract for the housing outreach team. And one of those concerns was the Poverello's responsibility with security and use of our security contract that we have just enacted with Black Knight Security to the tune of almost $800,000 without any contribution to that directly from the Poverello, though they do use those services. And I had attempted an amendment that would hold them to account for use of those services. I also added within that amendment accounting of cleanup costs that are continually borne by the city for what you see along the riverbank, for what you see along Cedar Street continually. We're going in there, we're doing cleanups. They cost money, cost taxpayer money. One of the cleanups was in excess of $20,000 last April. So I brought forth my amendment to pare down the requested funding by that amount to cover those costs. And of course, that amendment didn't pass. It is what it is, but those are costs that are invariably going to come up, this next year when spring comes around again, and we'll go back to, once again, cleaning and make those areas safe for pedestrians, safe for businesses around the area that have habitually complained about goings on in that particular area there. So I'm trying to be responsive to those folks. So with regards to the contract itself, another one of my main concerns, I brought this up on Wednesday as well, was the lack of metrics, performance metrics. Let me just say, there's no question at all that the housing outreach team is going out there engaging with these folks, the houseless community. That's not disputable, but my concern is, with anything else that I feel involves taxpayer dollars, there needs to be metrics of success. There needs to be goalposts. There needs to be metrics. And, I beg to differ, if we're saying those outcomes, those metrics, that's a secondary thing or tertiary thing, aside from, the work they're out there doing, that's just like a incidental byproduct almost. And, I would, I would beg to differ in that, matrices of success are essential or in fact compulsory for anything that the taxpayers going to be spending money on behalf of, this body, allocating those dollars to groups outside of the city, or for that matter, even programs within the city. There needs to be matrices of success and whether or not, the taxpayers getting good use of the monies that we're allocating. And the only way to do that is to have measures. And as we found out, speaking with staff last Wednesday, there was a lot of numbers as far as engagement, insofar as contacts, but there was nothing presented in terms of outcomes, people getting employment, folks getting housed, folks getting temporary housing, no numbers on that whatsoever. And, we've had the director from Payable here tonight, not offering anything new in that regard. As was brought up last Wednesday, there are a number of other providers here in town that also go out there and engage with the community that are not on the taxpayer dime. How they conduct their business, to what extent they conduct their business, that's up to them. And, how much they engage or how much they do with placement. I hope for their success. I wish for their success, but, those are up to those individual, nonprofits or faith-based organizations go out there and do that hard work, do that groundwork, to hopefully get success. But, that's not on the taxpayer dime. So I think in this particular instance, we have, an accountability element here. The other thing too, keep in mind, we have a housing sprint going on right now. And we get monthly updates from staff showing specifically, how many's been housed, temporary housing, permanent housing, who lost housing. Particular numbers on folks that are able to, get placed in the housing. And I think, we're talking about spending $211,000 worth of taxpayer money here. We should have similar performance metrics in that regard. The other thing I want to bring up too is just the idea, there's been some confusion I've seen out there. I feel there has been with regards to what is, I had proposed to cut, just specific to this $211,000 contract. I've heard people say that I'm cutting the Payable budget in half. This is, far from that. I went online, I just pulled it up here again, just to make sure I have the correct dollar amounts. This is from the Rezone website, fiscal year 2023, which is the most current information they have. Total revenue generated by the Payable Center in 2023 was $5,799,339. Total assets, $7,803,230, and expenses of $4,832,697. So what we're talking about here is a very small fraction of their total operating budget. And, I feel the city has an obligation to cover its interests with the taxpayer, and its interests with, security contracts, with cleanup, and, to say that, I'm asking, something that's, unattainable for this organization to, ensure that those needs are met with security and with cleanup, that's somehow going to break the bank or, cause a collapse of a particular program. I find that kind of hard to wrap my head around. And then I guess finally I just say, in closing last Wednesday, we talked about, after the vote, we need to have conversations. We need to have conversations with the Payable about security. Maybe next fiscal year we need to have conversations. I know, again, that was a sticking point with the contract with Black Knight and the lack of involvement from Payable staff to, assist in funding that. And I know it remains a concern with some of my colleagues, but conversations are good. But oftentimes on this body, I find, I haven't been in almost 2 years now, we use the word conversations a lot. And oftentimes I find it's for, someone brings up a valid concern from the public about a particular issue. We don't have an answer for that we could turn out right away. So what we say is, well, that's a conversation we need to have. And then, maybe we'll address that concern or maybe we won't. But it's a word we use an awful lot. And I think here it's less about concentration or conversations and more about negotiation. And I think, we're missing an opportunity here on behalf of the taxpayer to negotiate with a position of strength, with, quite frankly, leverage to talk about this $211,000 and, under what conditions we're going to provide that, under what conditions they're going to uphold, basic safety of the area around the Payable Center, and, have that conversation based on a true negotiation from a point of, strength from keeping the taxpayers, dollar in mind. And, I think we're failing in this regard with this contract by just simply approving it. And, we're going to delay for another fiscal year, another day, a conversation about, Payable being held to account for cleanup, or, this event, or, this security matter, or maybe it's going to involve Missoula Police or what have you. It's just, going to be relegated to a future time. So I'm kind of frustrated in that regard. But for the here and now, for this particular contract, keeping, the taxpayer in mind, and keeping, those dollars accountable without any matrices in place or metrics of success, I cannot support this contract.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Carlino.
Thanks. Yeah, I was very troubled at last week's Wednesday meeting when it felt like, the funding for the hot team was on the line, not only in this contract, but in the future with some of the council comments. And, I think we should be expanding the funding for this team and certainly not cutting it. I did a ride along with the hot team when I first got on city council, along with also doing ride alongs with Black Knight and all the other emergency services that we have. And what I saw was a team that has a lot of compassion and a team that is making a lot of progress. Not only getting people through today and making sure that they're able to survive and get their needs met, but the hot team was also working on getting people into housing in the future and connecting them to resources. So I think this is a vital city resource, and it would be very counterproductive to many of our city goals to cut funding for this team in the future. So I support funding this contract and continuing to fund this in the future and working to expand it.
Thank you, Councillor Carlino. And Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I do agree that we need to find ways to cut costs, but it does need to be done through a strategic approach, using priority-based budgeting and program efficiency metrics for all of our programs, not just one or two here and there. We need to hold all of our programs accountable to funding related to performance metrics. I also just want to take a second to thank Miss Bonnie and Maddie and everybody else who works for the Payable for the really hard work that you're doing with a vulnerable population that is typically very difficult to work with, but who are human beings and deserve the dignity and respect that we all deserve. And your work is invaluable to this community. I also want to note that this money has already been marked. It's already been allocated. It was allocated through our budget cycle earlier this year, a couple months ago. So it's already been approved for spending, and coming in and trying to cut costs that have been approved for spending during the last budget cycle is a poor use of our time, and also doesn't really make a lot of sense. The time to talk about whether or not spending is valuable or in the best interest of the public is during our budget cycle. So these funds have been allocated. We've already approved them. I think something that we haven't talked a lot about are all of the cost savings to taxpayers that the Payable and the hot folks do provide to taxpayers in the diversion of people from our criminal justice system and from our emergency rooms. When folks don't get their medications, they tend to have more mental health problems that stand out to people who then may call for assistance, and these unhoused folks get caught up in the criminal justice system for having bizarre behavior, or maybe an act of violence or something that could have been mitigated had they had their medications, and also diversions from the emergency room, the medications. And this is just an example of part of what the HOT folks are doing. But by providing medications to folks, that we're going to see a reduction in emergency room visits. And I would say that all of the work that the HOT folks and the Poverello does helps reduce taxpayer costs through diverting people from the criminal justice system and in the emergency room. I also think that, we need to be very careful about how we spend tax money, but I don't think it should be at the expense of our most vulnerable. And nor do I think that we should be in the business of making money as government. We have to be accountable and we have to show that we're spending tax dollars wisely, but we are not here to make those without a voice suffer the most or to make our money back. That's not what government was set up for. It was set up to look after all of us. And we're villainizing people who largely have no resources or hope to become who we think they should become without our assistance. I really, really appreciate the work of the HOT team and the Poverello. They are overwhelmed by all of the work that they need to do and all of the help that is needed from folks on the streets, regardless of the efforts of other service providers or nonprofits or the religious community. There are not enough helping hands in our community to help our unhoused population regardless. And voting no on this would end up costing us more. We would see more people in our emergency rooms and our criminal justice system. And I think it's very poor timing to have this conversation now. I agree we need to have these conversations at budget season. And I'll just wrap up with saying I happily vote yes. This is a program worth funding. And while we're talking about metrics, we need to do them to all of our programs and approach our budget through priority-based budgeting and program effectiveness metrics, not just spot checking here and there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Councilor Vasika.
Thank you. First thing I wanted to say was there are some questions from the audience that I wanted to answer. So in the contract, it stated that for the satisfactory completion of the scope of work, the city of Missoula will pay the contractor the sum not to exceed $211,476 for related fiscal year 2026 expenses between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th, 2026. So I hope that answers the questions that were in the audience. Last Wednesday, I was in favor of Mr. Campbell's amendments to the contract because I did think that the Poverello should help alleviate some of the fiscal burden on taxpayers for the cleanups and the Black Knight costs. Those amendments did not pass. That being said, I've always been very vocal about the closing of the Johnson Street shelter, and that did close. And so that saves over $1 million in taxpayer funding. And I have always said that I do believe in social safety nets. And if we don't have the Johnson Street shelter that just closed this year, we have to have something. And so while we transition from having the two shelters to just one, I don't feel right in voting no on this because it is going to be a very hard transition. We operated with only one shelter prior to COVID, prior to the Johnson Street shelter becoming a one-year emergency shelter that evolved into almost 6 years of having it. So I believe that we can go back to that. It's just going to change. Change is hard, and it's not something that we should do, especially in the winter months because it's already freezing out there. So I will be in support of this, and I do agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said because these are human lives, and we do have to do something. So I will be in support of this, but I am if I am on council next year, I would be looking forward to having conversations about the just discussing having provable metrics and having bases on what we can determine how much money we give to certain programs on every department level. So I look forward to that if we can do that, but I don't think that now is the time to take this out, to not honor the contract because it was approved in the budget. So I will be in support.
Thank you, Councilor Vasika. Councilor Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. As I said on Wednesday, and I think my colleague had said as well, we approved these contracts in our budget. So
to not approve this now would be pulling the rug out from underneath an organization in our community that provides critical services to the most vulnerable people among us. So I kind of shocked we're even talking about this, to be quite honest. So there is absolutely no way I will not vote for this. I do agree. I'm also a little confused because we have metrics in the contract. I think this is the first or the second year, and everyone keeps talking about these metrics, but we put metrics in the contract. Thank you. I know I'm imagining, I like your restraint, because I'm sure, Jill, you're sitting there thinking, wait, we're doing all this, and that's what I keep thinking. So we've done that. We talked about that on Wednesday. We talked about meeting and exceeding those metrics. I would love for everyone to get all of their visits in, because I do think that tells a story about what the team has been able to do and the visits that they have made, and just, you know, it's a compelling story to have the numbers behind it. So, you know, I had a comment on Wednesday, and I just want to clarify that I do believe that any contract that we have with anyone, not specific to the POV, but to everyone that we fund with public money, that we need to review those contracts every year. And I know that the mayor did that this year. So thank you for actually doing that, because we keep talking about it. And, you know, I think as a city council person, if I have questions about an organization that we're funding, I go to the departments. I've talked to Aaron Pahan. I have talked to the mayor about this. I could certainly call Jill at any time to discuss this with her. So I feel really surprised that we're talking about the metrics the way we are, because it's just not an accurate portrayal in my mind. And I'm surprised we're even having this conversation. And of course, I'm going to vote for you to sign the contract and to fund the organization. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Councillor Cheryl. Councillor Jones.
Thanks. Gosh, I had all these little things written down, and so many people in public comment and on council have said really thoughtful comments. So thanks for everybody leaning in tonight. I guess the thing I'll just say is kind of a big picture. This was in my committee. It was approved in the budget. We've had this for several years in place. I did not think it would spur a big discussion, but it did. And I think there's a silver lining in that. I think we should be talking about our homeless population right now. It's cold. Today it was really cold. It felt like winter. I'm like, I gotta thicken up my blood. It's coming. So instead of waiting until Thanksgiving, I think it's actually really good to be talking about it now. And I think this is a call to action. Thank you for those words, Ms. Harrison. You know, if the Poverello had an easy time getting all of their funding, I'm sure it would be a much less stressful job. But I imagine, as with many nonprofits, it's always a huge challenge. And I think it is, you know, we are in an era in which we have closed Johnson. We have a really robust housing sprint that's making some great strides, but we nonetheless have a homeless population. And as we head into winter, I think we should be talking about this. I appreciate all of the personal stories that were relayed tonight. We need to be ringing the bell right now as we head into winter that Poverello needs funding, it needs donations. This is the time to do it. So that's the silver lining for me. And thank you, Mr. Campbell, for having a really robust discussion last Wednesday and tonight. So as they say in volleyball, let's use this. I'm all very much in favor of it.
Ms. Jones, thank you for wrapping that up. You are the last council comment before we go to vote. This will be a roll call vote. So Ms. Trimble, when you're ready, take it away. One second.
All right. Voting on item 10.1.D.B, the Poverello Center Operations and Outreach Contract for fiscal year 26, beginning with Campbell.
No.
Perlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Melson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Zika,
Yes.
and Becerra.
Yes.
And that passes with 9 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, thank you all very much, and I want to thank everybody for coming down and participating this evening, as well as folks online to provide public comment on this agenda item. With that, that wraps up our regular business. And we'll now move on to the next agenda item. Because we're under, we have a bit of a new process, I'll just remind us that had there been more than the scheduled folks that we could have accommodated in the first 20 minutes, we would have left this time for additional public comment on non-agenda items. But we accommodated everybody in the first 20 minutes. That's the goal. So we'll move right on to communications from the mayor. So I'll just mention briefly that thanks to all who came out for the open house on October 22nd for Midtown Commons. I want to also let folks know that there is information on the Engage Missoula website, and again, that's under Engage Missoula Midtown Commons. It provides quite a bit of context in terms of the multitude of community-informed plans that this initiative meets, and then we have the opportunity to include key dates on that. So one of the things that will be coming up in November is the park planning process and concept design with the public. So our Parks and Recreation Department lead a really great process when it comes to park concept design. So that'll take place in November. We're looking forward to that. And then I wanted to mention a couple of things coming up this week that really deserve some attention. On Tuesday, the Missoula Art Museum will be unveiling a sculpture, and it is a special evening celebrating the installation of Coyote is Seeing All the Land. It is a monumental 20-foot steel sculpture created by renowned artist Jean Quick-to-See Smith. Quick-to-See Smith just passed away early 2025. And she is a citizen of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Nation, in collaboration with her son, Neil Ambrose Smith, who is Salish descendant. Realized in the final months of Quick-to-See Smith's life, this visionary work fulfills her long-held dream to create a sculpture for Missoula's art park. The sculpture was fabricated locally by Wolf Magritte and stands as a bold, playful, and powerful presence. This powerful artwork reflects Quick-to-See Smith's lifelong mission to amplify Indigenous voices and confront historical injustices. Set against the colonial facade of the old Carnegie Library building, the sculpture is a strong declaration of ongoing Salish presence. The Missoula Art Museum is honored to see this visionary project come to life and to carry her work forward with her blessing. We invite the community to join Neil Ambrose Smith in celebrating Quick-to-See Smith's lifelong legacy and the arrival of this landmark public artwork. A brief program of remarks will begin at 5:15 p.m. It is free and open to the public. I hope you will come and join me and others in the celebration of this amazing public art. I'm really looking forward to that amazing contribution to the Missoula Art Museum, our art community in downtown Missoula. The other thing I wanted to bring people's attention to is that the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, because of the work that it does, is able to invest in very necessary infrastructure in our community. And we have been able to install trail lighting along the entire Bitterroot Trail. This is a long time coming. The Bitterroot Trail is a significant commuter trail in Missoula connecting many different aspects and neighborhoods in our community. I'm very proud to say that we have been able to install all of the trails. And if you've seen all of the lights along trail, and if you've been on it, it is a significant improvement. I'm seeing some head nods. It really makes it so the trail is a much more formal piece of infrastructure in our community. It's very welcoming. And the idea here is that we're increasing safety, so thereby folks that are commuting, but also recreating, feel safer and have more access to our community. So we're going to be gathering at the MRL Park under the pavilion, where we'll have a number of children, myself included, with bike lights on, and we will be hitting the switch and turning on the lights along the Bitterroot Trail, and encourage folks to come down and join us. So just wanted to mention those fun couple of events. The last really fun event I wanted to mention is that Tuesday, November 4th, is Election Day. So we want to make sure everybody participates in their free and fair elections here in the city of Missoula and the county of Missoula. If you have not mailed back your ballot yet, I would recommend you drop it off. Generally, they say about a week, but we're getting real close. And so the elections office is 140 North Russell, and they are open during business hours, and they have a drop-off box in the evening. Thank you, everybody, for participating in your local elections. It's very, very important for our alive and our democracy that you do that. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to
Mayor,
Councilor.
excuse me.
Yes.
Mayor, point of clarity. I think our new public comment rule allowed for public comment at the end of a meeting, regardless of who signed up at the beginning. And so I just wanted to double check that, because I would imagine there might be some folks who are in the audience or online that would like to provide public comment at the end of the meeting.
Oh, that's not what was explained to me at the beginning of this. Oh, okay. So let's get clarification from the sponsor and then from President Cheryl. Thanks, Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I think the idea, and this is a little clunky tonight because we're just starting it, and so I appreciate that everyone did sign up. At least a few people signed up, but because people may come in late or choose to wait until the end of the meeting, the idea, I believe, behind it and how I understood it is that we would offer an opportunity to those that had not made public comment on non-agenda items in the first session to do it in the second part of it. Is that correct? That's my understanding of how it was written, but we've been kind of trying to muddle through this on the first day with, and thank you, Claire, for getting the sign up and getting it to the mayor. But is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
my understanding of how
The way that President Cheryl explained it. And I hadn't spoken with the mayor about this, and we have a meeting on Thursday, so I was just gonna wait until we were able to do that, because it is clunky. This is the first time doing it, but the intent was to allow both sessions, regardless of who, if the full 20 minutes was filled at the beginning or not, because people do come late.
Right, exactly. So thank you. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Also, for a point of clarification, folks are permitted to make public comment on items not on the agenda once during the evening. So it's either at the beginning or now at the end. So I can't really ask for names now until you get to the podium. So if there are anybody that would like to give public comment on items not on the agenda, you're welcome to now. And again, if you have not already given, and Mr. Spitzmacher, I'm sorry, but you've already made public comment. He did not know. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Fun times. Hold on. Mr. Spitzmacher, I'm going to go ahead and time you, and then you can go ahead and give your name for the record, please.
Point maker, PK McKenna. Well, let's start out on the word.
Sorry.
Oh.
There you go.
Let's start out on the word that's a racist word that I wasn't aware of. I've been asking people in regards to chomo. But I do know it's a racist word in jail and the prison system that's threatening. And as well as threatening at the location that was discussed, the Poverello and the Johnson Center, that I was persecuted over after I've been threatened by 3 of them. There's a specific individual that's been getting the emails of chomanizers or chomanism. That's a disease of the rotting brain. For the last year, 2 years, it has been not addressed appropriately. And believe me, I do feel threatened. And that's why I took my showers at the Poverello at 5:30 in the morning, because there are certain individuals that actually threatened me down in the men's dorm. And that's been emailed out. So my question of the individual that should have addressed it appropriately has not, and you're funding it, advocating it, But there's a new game changer in town that's documented. It's called PCH Mental Health. And they get the direct results of the fact that the problem was never addressed for the last 2.5 years. And I need to make a comment. That was a beautiful backdrop on the presentation on that subdivision that didn't have much use of the subdivision. And that river trail is a great place for local people that could have a better opportunity if you would build the right facility or get plans started in that triangle area and along of the entire riverfront. That trail could be advocated for a good convention opportunity and living facilities that actually has cash flowing employment to live in the facility that could be built along the river. Just check out Green Bay, Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Thank you, Mr. Spitzmacher. Okay. Other members of the public wishing to make public comment that haven't had a chance yet? Not seeing any in the room here. All right. And how about online? And okay, yes. Kyla Tripp, go right ahead. I'll go ahead and, when you unmute yourself, I'll go ahead and time you here.
All right, so obviously, Kyla Tripp here. I just have a general question for all you city council members up there. When you are coming in to vote on something, are you coming in with a predisposed, like, yep, I'm voting for it, I'm coming here to listen to people talk, and then I'm going to place my vote regardless? Or do you approach it as these people are coming in with actual concerns, and maybe it's one person, but maybe they represent an entire neighborhood behind them? I would really love to know that. And I feel like this is really important considering the amount of times that you have constantly voted over and over and over against what the public wants. And I'd also want to know, do you guys have a place where you can post all of the in favor and opposed to? I know you receive emails, you receive letters. If you can anonymously post that somewhere so that the city, the rest of us can see that information, I think it would be helpful for us to understand that. And I'd also like to ask that you guys maybe look at a conflict of interest when voting. Mr. Nugent there, Berkshire Hathaway, loving all of those new
Mrs. Tripp, I don't,
complexes.
please do not
All
address
right.
council members directly. Thank you. Continue with your comments.
Okay. For those of you on there that serve in places with conflict of interest where you may make money off of places that are sold to your company, I believe there should be a removal for conflict of interest. And I think that you guys should think really hard about that, because there are many, many people who have these concerns of not just about these votes, but about many other votes.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Ms. Tripp. All right. Any other members of the public wishing to make public comments on items not on the agenda? Okay. All right. I am not seeing any. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. We got it done. All right. We'll go back to general comments now from of city council members. And I'll go back to starting with Councilor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I was actually going to go back to a public comment from earlier. Ms. Schreiber, I agree with you completely on the parks comment you made. I've asked staff about this, and apparently best practices in current zoning is to broadly zone areas and cover the park, assuming that there are other restrictions in local laws that protect the park. I don't really like that. I've asked staff to look at that, and I intend to bring an amendment forward if it doesn't get corrected, because it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if we've identified them as parks, we should zone them as parks. So just, we have to share our combined interests when we can, right? As for kind of some of the other comments, we've talked a lot about decision space in our voting, often not aligning with the public comments that come in. Often people come and give public comment on items on council on Monday night that we've heard in committee. That, there's lots of information attached to the agenda about, we've seen staff reports and things of that nature. But many times what some of the public comment wants us to do isn't in the decision space of council and wouldn't necessarily be legal. That's especially true in land use, where decisions are really tied to state law, subdivision law, and city code, which is another good reason to be involved in this code reform process as it goes right now. I'm not a developer. I've never been involved in the subdivision. I think everybody in the world who knows my name knows what I do at this point. But I have never voted on something that I have any direct conflict of interest in and on. I've sought legal opinions. Nothing about what I do for a profession comes anywhere near Montana's code that specifically talks about conflicts of interest. And the idea that people who participate in the economy of a town can't be decision makers is really it's anti-democratic. If you played that out, it wouldn't just be the potential real estate agent who might eventually sell something in a subdivision that I really don't sell houses anymore, so I don't know about that personally, but it would be everybody else who participates on that. That would mean that we could have plumbers on city council who might get the contract to help build that house. It would mean that we can have landscapers, and that list goes on and on and on. So I understand and recognize that, but I felt the need to speak up because that public commenter called me out directly, but it happens all the time. And I have thick skin. I can take whatever people post about me online and all that, and that's fine. But just because someone disagrees with something doesn't make the people who vote differently than the bad people. It just means that you disagree. And I think that in this election season, that has been completely lost in some of the narrative of some people. So with that, I'll just end my comments for the night.
Thank you, Councilor Nugent. Councilor Melson.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on what my colleague, Councilor Nugent, said about code reform. Just want to make everyone aware that we are going through a code reform update process, and there is an open house. We would love to see you there. The open house is Wednesday, November 5th, so the next week. It's in the library on the 4th floor. You can drop in anytime between 4:30 and 7. And if you happen to live in the Lower Rattlesnake, the Lower Rattlesnake Neighborhood Council General Meeting is being held on Wednesday this week in the public library in the Cooper Room from 5:30 to 8. And we will also be discussing updates to the new zoning framework and the code, land use plan, etc. So if you're around and a resident of the Lower Rattlesnake, would love to see you on Wednesday. And then to the general public and residents of Missoula, come out and come talk to your staff and learn more about code reform next Wednesday, November 5th at the library. So thanks.
Thank you very much for sharing those announcements. Appreciate it. Councilor Becerra.
I will pass. Thank you.
You bet. And Councilor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. Eric said what I was going to say about code reform. Just, I would add that I've been having people reach out to me recently. I've had some calls, I've had some emails about it. So now is the time for everyone to engage. Hopefully we will have a big group there on the 5th at the library. And I would also just say, Mayor, I apologize that I didn't go through some of the details of our new public comment plan, but we will figure it out as we move along.
Indeed we will. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Councilor Jones.
I'll pass. Thank you.
All right, you bet. And Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll pass as well.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Pasica.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to echo what Ms. Sherrill said. With the new public comment thing, a lot smoother than I anticipated, honestly. And I have to thank the mayor and Claire for that. Because changing rules, we have to, we do so much background on research that's just on paper, and then so having it enacted in real life is a lot different than how you see it on paper. So I do have a meeting with the mayor this week, so we will be discussing that. Because originally my intent for having the sign-up sheet was to make it more smooth, because we only had 20 minutes. I didn't want people, like running up to the microphone or then trying to comment twice. We'd have a list of the people that were doing it, but we'll talk all about that this week. And I'm very excited about it. I think it went great, and I love seeing all the public comment down here. I wanted to give a big shout out to, I was driving up and down the valley and talking about not necessarily the trail, but on the east side of the highway there, not the east side highway, but the east side of the highway, I noticed that it was extremely clean, and whoever volunteered to clean it up for miles from Lolo all the way to, I think, past Stevensville. It was just trash was picked up at every single mile marker. So I was very impressed with that. It looked great, and just in time for the lighting. So that's awesome. I wanted to remind folks, because Claire did it this at the beginning of the meeting, but we do not have council next week. Also, we have Halloween this Friday, so watch out for the little ones running around. And then regarding one of the public commenters, you can look at the minutes that are posted after each meeting, and then in those, it does have a list of the ayes, the nays, the abstains, and the absences. So you can look at how people voted with that. And then regarding if we make up our minds before, especially with, so I do all my research well ahead of the meeting, because especially with land use issues, there's a lot of attachments, a lot of reading you have to do, a lot of research. And then you reach out to staff with questions, and then sometimes the answers give more questions, and then you ask those on the floor. And so you kind of have an idea of how you're going to vote on things before you come to the meeting, because you do all the research. You have an idea of what your values are, what you believe in the project, whether it be in the housing committee or climate committee. You do your homework, and you form an opinion. And I have changed my mind on the floor. I came in here, it was actually my first year on council. I came in here wanting to vote no on the aquifer in the library that the kids play at. I thought that was a ridiculous thing to spend taxpayer dollars on, but the public comment and the presentation regarding it changed my mind. I was like, oh, actually, that's a really cool idea. And I did this my first year on council before I even thought about having children. And now my 4-year-old loves it, and I'm really happy that I voted yes on that. So I do listen to all the commenters, and I do allow it to really, penetrate into what I believe, so that I can have an open mind about everything. That's just me, though. And with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vasika. How about for council members online? Any comments this evening?
I'll pass. Thanks, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Farmer. Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to respond to the caller that called in and said sometimes she wonders if votes are predetermined or not. And I think that there have been instances in the past where we've received a significant amount of public comment on issues that we have then voted against the will of the public. And so I just wanted to validate that caller and say that there are times where council has voted against what we've heard from our public commenters. I think that it's really good to be reminded that we work for the people and that we work to represent you. We are spending your tax dollars, and it shouldn't be foregone conclusions. And I think we have a little more flexibility than we often tap into. But I just wanted to very much validate that caller. And I also wanted to thank the people who came in to provide public comment. We need to be easy to reach, and we need to be able to hear your concerns. And sometimes if you have something good to say about us, we like to hear that as well. And so hopefully we can see a better use of public comment time in the beginning of our meetings so that you folks can get home to your families or whatever it is that you do after a big work day. So yeah, happy to actually, I'll end there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan, and anybody else? Councillor Carlino, you're not coming off mute, so I assume not this evening.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right, I do believe that is everyone. Was going to check. I know that Councillor Anderson got stuck in travel, so she did not join us this evening. Okay, that wraps up our general comments of city council members. It is 8:17 p.m. and I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.